He says he doesn't want anything serious, but he keeps calling. He doesn't want commitment, yet he still wants access to your time, your energy, and your body. Sound familiar? You're not crazy for feeling confused, because deep down something feels off, and it is. This isn't love. This is comfort without clarity, and it's time to see it for what it is. But here's where it gets powerful. When you understand why he does this, why he wants the benefits of connection without the weight of responsibility, you stop blaming yourself and you start playing by a different rule book. This isn't about manipulation. This is about holding your value in the face of emotional avoidance and becoming the woman who doesn't chase uncertain love because she attracts something greater. If you've ever felt unseen, half-loved, or emotionally used, this message will shift everything, because the win isn't making him stay. It's making yourself undeniable. Have you ever found yourself lying awake at night, rereading the same text message over and over, trying to make sense of a man who says he doesn't want anything serious, but still keeps showing up? He calls, flirts, even says he misses you. But when you ask for clarity, he reminds you that he's not ready. It's confusing, it's draining, and most of all, it leaves you feeling like you're the one who needs to figure it all out. But here's the truth. You don't need to decode him, you need to trust yourself. When a man tells you he doesn't want anything serious, believe him the first time. That's not cold, that's self-protection. His words may be careful, but his behavior might be giving you mixed signals. Texting you late, asking to see you, keeping a thread of connection alive. Not because he's cruel, but because he likes the comfort of your presence, without the pressure of commitment. Why does he do this? Psychologically, many men in this space are experiencing a form of emotional unavailability. It often stems from fear of losing freedom, fear of not being enough in a relationship, or fear of emotional exposure. When intimacy feels too real, too vulnerable, they retreat. But when the distance grows, their ego misses the warmth you gave. So they return, not always with intention, but with impulse. This is why your power lies in not reacting to his inconsistency, but responding to your truth. Don't chase. Don't explain your worth. Don't try to be patient enough so he wakes up. That's a battle you'll lose, not because you're not worthy, but because you've already made his confusion more important than your clarity. Instead, anchor in this truth. When a man says he's not ready, it's not your job to prove him wrong. It's your cue to walk in the direction of peace. You don't win by staying available to someone unsure. You win by protecting your energy, honoring your boundaries, and holding out for someone who chooses you with certainty, not convenience. Let his energy speak louder than his words. And let your absence teach what your presence couldn't. That's not giving up. That's emotional self-respect, and it's how you reclaim your power. Have you ever found yourself constantly overthinking what to say, how to act, or how to be enough for someone who still won't fully show up for you? Maybe he enjoys your company, he reaches out, he's sweet, but he still hesitates, avoids labels, or backs away when things get too real. And deep down you start wondering, is it me? Am I not doing enough? This is where so many women quietly begin to lose themselves, not because they're weak, but because they care deeply. But caring doesn't mean convincing. When a man says he's not ready and you try harder to prove you're the one, you're not winning him. You're slowly abandoning you. And the painful truth is, someone who is emotionally unsure cannot be pulled into certainty by your effort. His indecision is not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of his emotional readiness. Here's what's really happening. When a man has unresolved emotional wounds, maybe from past relationships, childhood, or internal fears, he often enjoys closeness until it begins to require responsibility. It's not that he doesn't like you. In fact, he might even admire you. But the thought of committing can trigger anxiety because it means showing up in ways he may not feel capable of. So what does he do? He sends mixed signals, just enough to keep you engaged, but never enough to truly commit. That's why the solution is never to do more. It's to step back into your value, not out of punishment, but out of self-protection. You don't need to prove you're worth staying for. You need to choose relationships that don't make you question your place in someone's life. You need to stop asking, how do I make him see? And start asking, why am I staying where I don't feel seen? Choosing you doesn't mean closing your heart. It means opening it only where it's safe to do so. You deserve someone who doesn't need convincing, someone whose clarity matches your kindness. And the moment you stop chasing mixed signals and start listening to your own emotional needs, you stop surviving relationships and start choosing love that's mutual, grounded, and real. That's not walking away from love, it's walking toward it. Have you ever noticed how the more available you are to him emotionally, physically, or mentally, the less certain he becomes? It's confusing. You give him loyalty, love, softness, and yet he still hesitates. You stay, hoping consistency will earn you commitment. But instead of drawing him closer, it starts to feel like he's slipping further away. That's not your fault. But here's the truth most people won't tell you. Your continued availability is reinforcing his emotional indecision. When a man is emotionally unsure, not fully committed but not letting go either, he often remains in a gray area. And when you stay present in that space, hoping for change, you're unintentionally training him that he doesn't have to choose. He gets the benefit of your emotional presence without having to rise to the responsibility of clarity. Why does this happen? Psychologically, this kind of behavior often stems from fear of emotional intimacy. It's not always that he's a bad person. It's that closeness triggers something in him. Maybe it reminds him of past abandonment. Maybe he fears losing independence. Or maybe he simply doesn't have the emotional tools to hold space for your needs without feeling pressure. So he stays just connected enough to not lose you, but distant enough to avoid being vulnerable. And you, out of love, try harder, you stay kind, you over-explain, you compromise, thinking maybe if I'm patient enough, he'll come around. But what you're actually doing is building a dynamic where his confusion is allowed to exist, even thrive at your emotional expense. Here's your clarity. You're not here to wait for someone to maybe love you right. You're here to be loved fully now by someone who's ready. You don't fix this by threatening to leave. You fix this by gently but firmly becoming unavailable to inconsistency. That doesn't mean you shut down. It means you step back with love and dignity. It means you stop showing up for someone who won't meet you halfway. And in that space, something powerful happens. He either realizes your worth and rises, or he fades. Either way, you win. Because real love doesn't leave you guessing. And the more you trust your inner clarity, the less space confusion can take up in your life. That's not rejection. That's redirection toward peace, toward power, toward you. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you're constantly adjusting who you are just to keep his attention? You shrink your needs. You silence your intuition. You make yourself more agreeable, more accommodating, more patient, hoping that if you just show how easy you are to love, he'll finally commit. But here's the hard truth. When you trade your emotional clarity for his comfort, you start losing yourself. Many women fall into this because they believe their worth is tied to being chosen, especially by someone emotionally unavailable. You think that if you just don't scare him off, if you're loving enough, then he'll come around. But chasing his approval doesn't build connection. It builds anxiety. And it teaches your nervous system to equate inconsistency with love. Here's what's actually happening. When a man carries emotional baggage, fear of vulnerability, unresolved past hurt, or deep-rooted ego patterns, he often becomes overwhelmed by emotional expectations. Instead of leaning in, he detaches. And in that detachment, he learns that you'll wait, that you'll keep showing up even when he doesn't. But here's what no one tells you. Your emotional clarity, knowing what you want, expressing it calmly, and standing by it is far more powerful than trying to be enough for someone unsure. Why? Because clarity creates security, not just for you, but for him too. When you speak from a grounded place of truth without begging or attacking, it shows you respect yourself. And ironically, that's often what causes people to step up or step out. Either outcome is a win because you're no longer participating in a relationship based on guessing games or emotional crumbs. You're leading with your truth and trusting that the right person will meet you there. It's okay to say, this is what I want, and if you can't give that, I release you without resentment. That's not cold, that's emotionally mature. When you stop performing and start standing still in your truth, you send a signal, not just to him, but to the universe, that you are ready for real, grounded love. And that kind of woman, she's unforgettable, not because she chased, but because she chose herself. Have you ever reached a point where you've done everything right? You've shown up, stayed open, given him space, tried to understand him, and still he remains distant or unsure. You've expressed your feelings, dropped subtle hints, even been patient with his mixed signals. But nothing changes. He still feels just out of reach. And maybe, just maybe, you're scared that pulling away will mean losing him completely. But here's something powerful no one tells you. When you gently step back with love, not anger, his true emotional capacity is exposed. You see, many men who are emotionally unavailable or intimacy avoidant operate in a kind of safety zone. As long as you're there, giving, waiting, hoping, they don't have to confront what they really feel. Your emotional availability becomes a buffer between him and his fears. He doesn't have to commit, but he also doesn't have to be alone. Why does he pull away in the first place? Often it's rooted in internal conflict, a tug of war between wanting closeness and fearing it. It might come from past betrayal, a deep fear of being seen, or an ego that links vulnerability to weakness. So when things start to feel emotionally real, he shuts down. Not because you did something wrong, but because he doesn't yet know how to stay open in love. This is why your graceful distance matters, not the kind filled with punishment or manipulation, but the kind that says, I value connection, but not at the cost of myself. When you step back, you remove the emotional cushioning he's relied on, and that silence becomes a mirror. He has no one to distract him from his own feelings, no one to keep the emotional flame burning while he decides whether to show up. Just space. And space tells the truth. He will either begin to recognize the depth of what he's losing or remain where he's been all along, uncertain. Either way, you gain clarity, because sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to say more, try harder, or stay longer. It's to allow your absence to speak where your words no longer reach. That's not a game, it's emotional self-respect. And in that space, you rise, not from his reaction, but from your own quiet strength.